Julia Ainsley, Joshua Johnson, Shane Harris. All right. There are just no words on Duncan Hunter. Duncan Hunter, first, who's the indicted, second congressman to endorse Donald Trump. He was indicted earlier this week. What's been interesting are the different excuses Duncan Hunter has come up with. When he first was indicted, he borrowed a lot of language from Donald Trump and attacked the FBI. Take a listen.
This is the new Department of Justice. This is the Democrats' arm of law enforcement. That's what's happening right now. And it's happening with Trump, and it's happening with me, and we're going to fight through it and win. We've seen with Strzok and what the FBI and the DOJ have been doing. Let's let them expose themselves for what they are, and that's a politically motivated group of folks.
All right, that was after day one. Last night, he went on Fox and found somebody else to blame.
Are you saying that it's more her fault than your fault?
Well, I'm saying when I went to Iraq in 2003, the first time I gave her power of attorney, and she handled my finances throughout my entire military career, and that continued on when I got into Congress, because I'm gone 5 days a week, I'm home for 2. So, and she was also the campaign manager. So whatever she did on that'll be looked at too, I'm sure. But I didn't do it.
My apologies there. The she, Mrs. Hunter, Duncan Hunter's wife. Julia, well, wow. Now, it was funny when the description, when they entered their not guilty pleas, I saw the color we got in our internal wire was, oh, Mr. and Mrs. Hunter came in separated by 3 attorneys. And so we were all wondering, they have separate, something may be up, but you never know. Something's up.
This became the defense. I mean, it's very similar to what we saw in the Bob McDonald case in Virginia.
Right, you wanted to blame the wife.
Idea of separating yourself from your spouse, and then the attorneys very quickly get onto that message from the beginning. But it's a hard one to sell because, as you've pointed out, I mean, that is what marriage is. When you've combined bank accounts and you have something like power of attorney, it's hard to turn around and blame. We've seen other times, like Paul Manafort, who did stay with his wife. They jointly signed a lot of things, though she has been left out of all of this. But I think it's a harder and harder sell, especially when there are things that benefited him, which they so clearly did in this case. They weren't just to benefit her.
That didn't strike me as a very sympathetic figure running for re-election to Congress, Shane.
No.
That's look, San Diego, the district there in San Diego, it is a little more conservative than most Southern California districts. But it's also a very integrity-filled.
Well, it's a district with a big military presence, and he did something that when he said, I was off in Iraq, and Duncan Hunter always led with his military service. He was one of the few veterans serving in Congress. Military integrity issues were always stories that he liked to flag to reporters, and among the charges in this indictment is that he was passing off personal purchases and hiding them as contributions to veterans organizations.
And to use this as a defense is going to turn off a lot of veterans. They don't like that, Joshua.
They don't like that. I do, the political cynic in me kind of wonders what the larger effect of this is going to be. Yeah. I totally get what Shane is saying in terms of the district that he's in, being so close to the military hubs in San Diego and 29 Palms further east. Like, that's not going to play well there. In the larger scheme of things, I wonder whether or not Duncan Hunter just kind of comes off as this sleazy politician who finally got caught, or as something that speaks larger to the nature of the party right now. He was one of the early endorsers of President Trump, as was Representative Collins, I believe it was, and now both of them are in trouble. Does this send a larger message? Is this just one of those stories that kind of gets to be part of the political noise?
In fairness, it's sort of like, I know a lot of people want to attach it to Trump, but there has been a long-standing, there's usually somewhere a handful of congressmen who about every cycle think their campaign account is their personal trust fund.
For sure.
Okay, Jesse Jackson Jr. went to serve time because essentially the same thing, right? They think the congressional money is their money, and that's what the Hunters thought. They treated it as their money. And this is where the campaign finance laws, I think, are just, this is the part where what is the balance of, and I know we sit here, we struggle to do it, but you have to make the penalties tough enough so they don't do these things.
Right, and they get briefed. I mean, you get an ethics briefing as soon as you're elected, but you're also told, I mean, when you were running a campaign, you're told about these laws. So they can't plead ignorance. They can't all be political outsiders. But I also think that we can't overlook that first argument, that first defense he made about the FBI being against him. If every Republican continues to plead that, you get into the territory that Chris Wray worries about, which is when an FBI person or someone from the Justice Department stands in front of a jury, they're not believed anymore. They're seen as political.
I think a lot of Americans are going to start doing this. You know, you heard this rhetoric. Duncan Hunter used it, but I've heard it in small. Look, Eric Greitens tried it in Missouri when at first he tried to make it the deep state. I think he used deep state as if the deep state was going after Missouri Republican politics.
It's also why then, in light of that, and you're absolutely right, he also said the Democrats' arm of law enforcement, someone forgot to tell him that the Justice Department is run by a Republican. But
a Republican who said, I run this place.
Right, but that's why the Manafort verdict this week also, though, matters, is because you demonstrated this is not a witch hunt, it's not the deep state. These are facts, and 12 people can get in a room and decide, yes, these are facts.
Even somebody
with a MAGA hat.
That's right, who said she was hoping Paul Manafort was innocent. Anyway, you guys are great. Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Beat the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.